also put into the record a 4-page memo of sections of the law that we passed that mandate that if you buy assets, you do mortgage foreclosure, and make it very clear, when you say spending, first I have to say this, we obviously all appreciate the concern for the taxpayers' money, but the chair of the FDIC talks about $24 billion. That's what, 40% of what we just gave to AIG out of this program. And you say this is for an investment, not spending. I don't know what investment counselor, absent macroeconomic conditions, would have advised you to invest in AIG. I suspect that does not rate highly as an investment these days. I hope it goes well going forward, and there's no question that this will be helpful to it. But $40 billion for AIG, and then we can't find $24 billion on the mortgage foreclosure, is part of the reason we have the real problem with the country. But let me just say, there are pages, it's 4 pages of specific authorization to buy up mortgages and write them down. Section 109C, upon any request arising under existing investment contracts, the Secretary shall consent, where appropriate in considering net present value of the taxpayer, to reasonable requests for loss mitigation measures. In Section 110, homeowner assistance by agencies. To the extent that the federal property manager holds, owns, or controls mortgages, they shall implement a plan that seeks to maximize assistance for homeowners. The bill is replete with authorization to you, not simply to buy up mortgages, but in effect to do some spending, because we are talking about writing them down. So the argument that, frankly, of all the changes that have come in the program, this wouldn't be a change. This was the program. And my colleague from California, who you'll be hearing from shortly, made a big point of this on the floor. So the argument that this is not part of the program simply doesn't work. So do you agree, Mr. Secretary, that in fact the bill does authorize aggressive action, not simply to buy up mortgages, but in buying them up, take some action to reduce, in some ways, the amount owed so we diminish foreclosures?
Mr. Chairman, 2 things. First, I need to just say a word about AIG, because the primary purpose of the bill was to protect our system from collapse. AIG was a situation, a company that would have failed had the Fed not stepped in. Had we had the TARP at that time, this is right down the middle of the plate for what we would have used the TARP for. As it turned out, because it should have had preferred and a Fed facility, and as it turned out, we needed to come in again to stabilize that situation and maximize the chances that the government would get money back. So I just wanted...
I'm not objecting to the AIG. I am just saying, though, that the standards of what we do, and obviously foreclosure is also a serious problem for the economy.
I agree with you on the bill. There is no doubt that, and so don't misunderstand what I say, that we came to Congress with the intent to get at the capital program that banks were facing and the system was facing through purchasing large amounts of illiquid assets. And so the bill, and it was to purchase those assets and then resell them. And our whole discussion, because that's what we were talking about, was how to use these and use this investment position to make a difference and mitigate foreclosures. My only point is, now that we haven't bought those assets and illiquid assets, that at least the intent, as I had seen it, at least all the discussions we had, went to buying assets and reselling them. It didn't go to a direct subsidy. But
no, Mr. Secretary, I have to interrupt you. No, you are talking legitimately about your intent, yeah. But we had to get the votes for the bill. Our intent was also relevant, and I read you sections of the bill which says write it down, give them assistance. So the bill couldn't have been clearer that one of the purposes, and by the way, we're talking about what, $24 billion out of $700 billion. You're talking about 4% of the total amount. But the point is that clearly part of this was not just to stabilize, but to reduce the number of foreclosures for good macroeconomic reasons. And so, again, the intent couldn't be clearer from what I've read.
Let me then, Mr. Chairman, say what you've heard me say a number of times before, that going back many, many months before it was as topical as it is now, we've been working very, very aggressively at the individual, helping the individual. As recently as last week.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, we don't have a lot of time, and I don't usually do this, but
Okay, well, let me just...
what the question is, the language in the TARP. We understand that there are other activities going on. I don't accept them as a substitute for using the authority that we very specifically and carefully wrote into the TARP and that was essential to it getting passed.
Well, what you've heard from me and what you heard from me last night, and which I will say again, that I am going to keep working on this and looking for ways to use the taxpayer money as they expect me to here with regard to foreclosure mitigation. We have been, as recently as last week, taking a step which I think will have...
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, those are not substitutable. Because I will tell you this, and I apologize for taking the time. It is nobody's view that we have been as successful as we need to be for the sake of the economy in reducing foreclosures. We have a very large pot that was intended to be part of that effort that's going untapped. The gentleman from Alabama.
You were responding to.
No, we're out of time. We can respond with you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've just been told if you don't give assistance or lend to folks, you'll be waxed. It's sort of a continuation of what we've been hearing since the 1970s by federal policy and the GSEs is lend and meet the needs of folks and assist them. And I think as a result of that, the financial system and the economy has been waxed by lending to people that weren't creditworthy. And I hope, and I appreciate that your intergovernment statement stressed creditworthy borrowers.
Right.
Secretary Paulson, I very much appreciate something that you did in your opening statement, and I think you distinguished between the economy and the financial system, because people did question some of the actions by saying, well, the economy is strong. And, but the financial system, chaos or distress there will affect the economy. It has that effect. And I think we've heard good news here, and there is stability returning to the financial system. And I think the good news is, just like this instability in the financial system affected the economy going forward, and it may take a while to do, but the stability that has returned to the system will, in the long term, strengthen the economy, and I think that's good news for all of us. The TARP program, the capital purchase program, all of them had as a design two things. One was restoring the stability to the financial markets, and I think that we're well on the way to achieving that. And as you said, you don't get credit for something that you avoid, and that would be a collapse of the financial system. The second objective was to strengthen the economy by restoring lending to companies and borrowers. And on that score, it hasn't worked as well. Would you comment on, do you think we're on the right track in restoring lending?
Yes, Congressman Backus, I think we're on the right track. Remember, this is early days. In terms of the capital, it has just gone out, and a lot of it still hasn't gone out to the banks. And the way I look at where we are today is I think we've turned the corner in terms of stabilizing the system, preventing a collapse. I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in terms of recovery of the financial system, getting it working again, getting it credit flowing again. I think this is going to be key to getting the economy going, and it's going to take a lot of work and time. I agree with what the chairman said about bank lending, and I just want to say to get to your point on foreclosure prevention. I understand the chairman's point, and he expects and wants to see something in the TARP, specifically in the TARP, to deal with that, and we are continuing to work on that. I did want to say, though, that